Do you want to look snatched, but you don't want layers and layers of makeup on your face? Do you want to have a sculpted look that's also daytime appropriate? If this sounds like you, then look no further. I have just the solution for you. My name is Jennifer Love. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about soft contouring. Soft contouring is the perfect makeup technique for day-to-day wear. You end up using less product and it's far less time consuming than the traditional highlight and contour method. This style of makeup is also perfect for mature skin because the less product you use, the less product you have to worry about setting into your fine lines and wrinkles. If you haven't yet, guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I am a new content creator, so it would really help me out. You guys can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok. Links to those will be in the description below. If you want to look daytime snatched, then stay tuned. I want to make sure that I'm starting off with clean and hydrated skin. I also went ahead and I primed my face off camera, and I used a few products to do this. I started off with the e.l.f. Power Grip Primer, and I just put this all over my face. This is a really great product because it dries down tacky, making sure that our makeup adheres to it really well, and it lasts all day long. The second product that I used to prime my face is the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer. I have a little bit of pore dilation on my nose, a bit on my forehead, and a bit on my chin. So I want to make sure that I'm using a product that's going to fill in those pores so I can get a really flawless, smooth base for my makeup. And last but certainly not least, the Smashbox Hydrating Under Eye Primer. And this is just to make sure that my concealer doesn't set into any fine lines and wrinkles. Pro tip, you want to avoid using an eyeshadow primer underneath your eye. Eyeshadow primers work by absorbing any oil that you have on your eyelid, and that's what makes the eyeshadow go on really smoothly and apply really well. But this is the exact opposite of what we want for under our eye, where we're looking for a little bit more hydration. Eyelid primers are really going to dry out the skin in your under eye area, accentuating any fine lines and crepiness that you may have, which is going to make you look a lot older than you actually are. The next step that I'm going to move on to is concealing. You're going to want to make sure to use a creamy concealer to do this in order to ensure that it's going to melt really nicely into your skin. To do this, I'm going to use the Marcel CC concealer and corrector. This product is really great because it's very highly pigmented, so it's going to cover up any dark circles or other imperfections we may have while using a minimal amount of product. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply this to my under eye area, as well as any other imperfections that I may have. I'm just taking a little concealer brush and I'm putting some of the product onto the brush. And then I'm going to take my hand and just kind of melt the product into my hand while working it into the brush. This is going to make sure that I'm not using too much product. And I'm just going to put this on the dark parts of my under eye, making sure that I'm concealing those dark spots. And I'm also going to add a little bit to any like zits or discoloration or anything like that I have on my skin. So I do have a few zits on my nose today that I'm going to want to cover up. So I'm just going to put a little bit of product on there. I have a little bit of redness beside my nostrils, so I'm just going to cover that up, and just a couple zits on my chin. I'm going to let the concealer set on my face for maybe about a minute or so before I go ahead and blend it in. That's just going to ensure that I have maximum coverage in all the areas that I'm trying to, well, cover up. Now my concealer's set, I'm just going to go ahead and blend it in. I'm using this concealer brush to do that, and I'm just kind of patting it into the concealer. When we're blending in concealer, we want to make sure we're doing so in a patting motion and not a wiping motion. Patting is going to make sure that we're pushing the product into the skin while blending it out. However, if we were to do more of a swiping motion, we're actually going to be wiping the product off of the areas that we want to conceal. Now I'm ready to move on my base layer, or the foundation layer. However, I'm going to opt out from using foundation. What I instead prefer to do on a regular day-to-day basis is use a mixture of Sheer Tint and CC Camo Cream. The two products that I'm going to be using to do that is the Marcel Sheer Tint in Beige Lumiere, and I'm also going to be using the e.l.f. CC Camo Cream in the shade Medium 330. I really like to use this mixture of the sheer tint and the camo cream because the camo cream is going to give us a really nice coverage. You know, it's going to cover up the redness that I have on my cheeks and all that, but the sheer tint is going to give us a really nice healthy glow. So I'm going to do about a 50-50 ratio of these two products. If you were looking for it to be more sheer, you would use more of the sheer tint. And if you were looking for more of a fuller coverage, you would use more of the camo cream. So I'm just putting a little bit of that on my hand. And I'm going to take my foundation buffing brush that I'm going to use to apply the product to my hand. And I'm just going to mix them together like this. I want to work the product really well into my brush. And then I'm just going to start applying it to my face. I'm going to start first applying it on the areas where I feel like I have more coverage, because wherever we first apply the product is where we're going to get the most product payoff. So I'm just applying it all over my face. I'm going to pull it down my neck as well, just to make sure that it's really, really well blended in. While I'm applying the foundation with this buffing brush, I'm making sure that I'm applying in these little circular buffing motions. That's going to ensure that I get a really nice skin-like finish and that the product is evenly distributed on my skin and I'm not going to have any patchiness. Once I have my mixture of the sheer tint and the camo cream fully applied, I'm just going to come in with this large beauty sponge and I'm going to tap it all over my face. I'm just doing this to make sure that the mixture is fully blended into the skin and that there aren't any brush strokes left over from my buffing brush. This is going to give us a really, really airbrushed, skin-like look to our skin. The next step that I'm going to do is contouring, but I'm only going to use a minimal amount of contouring on my face. For this step, you should use either a cream or a stick contour. That way the contour is going to melt into your skin really, really well, and it's going to give you the most natural effect. I'm using the Fenty Beauty Matchstick in the new shade Swedish. It's just the perfect shade to use on a light medium skin tone, and I find it just gives you such a nice, subtle contour effect. So I'm just going to contour a few key places on my face. Subtly contouring is much different than that full glam contour, whereas, for example, on my cheeks, if I was doing a full glam contour, I would start from all the way over here and drag my contour to about the midline here. But that's just going to be too much for the soft contouring effect that we want today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find where my hollow of my cheek is, and I'm going to draw a little line just slightly above it, just right here. Putting the contour in the hollow of the cheek sometimes can actually drag the face down a little bit. If you put it a little bit of above, it's going to give us more of an uplifted look. I'm also just going to put a little bit right here. I find that this is the most overlooked spot when contouring your cheeks. If you put a little bit of a shadow right above where your cheekbone is at its highest, it's really going to make your cheekbone there pop. And for my jaw, if I was doing a full glam look, I would probably bring my contour all the way across like this. But for today's look, that's just going to be a bit too much. I'm just going to put a line right here on both sides. And I think I want to just make my jawline look a little bit sharper. So I'm gonna contour right there. Now you see we have our contour in place. Instead of using a lot of product like we would for the full glam look, we've just used a little bit and we've strategically placed it in certain spots to give us some depth to our face. I'm just gonna take a smaller damp beauty sponge and I'm gonna start buffing all of this out. I want to make sure that my contour is really, really, really well blended in for this look. When I'm blending the contour of my cheeks, I want to make sure that I'm kind of bouncing my sponge upwards, so I'm blending the product up. We don't want to blend the product downwards because then we're going to bring it down into the hollow of our cheek, and that's not going to give us the uplifted effect that we want. I'm just going to actually blend out the contour on my nose with my fingers. I'm blending the sides upwards, starting from where I applied the product, and just blending in this bottom part as well. One good tip is to take your beauty sponge that you used to blend out your foundation that still has the product on it, and you can just use that to go over your contour just to make sure that it's really, really nicely blended in and that we don't have any harsh lines left over. Next thing that we're going to move on to is our blush. I would advise opting for a creamy blush. That way the product can melt really, really nicely into the skin, and that's going to give us a really nice natural look. Today I'm going to be using the e.l.f. Putty Blush in the color Bahamas. When doing a natural soft contoured look, I often tend to lean towards more warmer peachy colors. For my skin tone in particular, I just find that it's going to give me the most warm and natural glow to my cheeks. I'm just going to take my little makeup knife here and I'm going to take a little bit of the product out of the container and I'm going to apply it to my hand to warm the product up. I'm just going to take my finger and continue to warm the product up, and I'm actually going to go ahead and apply it to my cheeks with my finger. That's going to melt it into my skin really, really nicely. So I'm just going to apply a little bit right above where I had applied my contour. Now that I have my blush placed in the spot that I want, I'm just going to take a different beauty blender. I'm not going to use the same one that I used to contour because that may have contouring product on it. And if I use it in the area where I've applied my blush, it could create kind of a muddy look. So I'm using a different beauty blender and I'm just softening the blush into my skin, making sure that it's really, really well blended in. The next step is brightening key areas of our face. For this step, I'd advise using a hydrating serum concealer. That's going to blend into the skin really, really well, and it's going to give us a really nice glowy finish. For this step, I'm using the NYX Bare With Me Concealer Serum, and I'm using it in the color beige. I'm just going to apply a little bit of the product to my hand, and then I'm going to take my concealer brush. I'm going to work the product into my brush, and then I'm going to apply it to key parts of my face that I'm looking to brighten. I'm going to put a little bit on top of my cheekbone here. I definitely want to brighten the inner corners of my eye. So I'm going to put a little bit on the inner corners. I'm going to brighten up my nose, but I'm just going to do the bridge of my nose right here. Brighten up the forehead a bit, put a little bit on the forehead, and a little bit on the chin. I'm also just going to add a little bit of this to my Cupid's bow and my nasal labias. I think that's what they're called at least. Normally, if I was doing more of a glam contour look, I would take my concealer that I'm using to brighten and I would make a line be right here underneath my contour to kind of chisel out my contour. But for this look today, I'm going to skip that step entirely just because it can create kind of a harshness on the cheek, and that's not going to give us the soft contour look that we're going for today. I'm going to take another beauty blender and I'm just going to start lightly blending out my brightening concealer. We want to be very gentle when we're blending in our highlighting concealer underneath our eyes because if we're too aggressive, we run the risk of disturbing the color correcting concealer that we put on underneath, and that could make our dark circles show through again. I'm just going to use some of the residual product that's on my sponge and I'm going to go around the sides of my nose, just at the corner of my mouth. Now that I have my brightening concealer all blended out, I'm just going to go ahead and set all these layers together with a setting mist. To do this, I'm using the e.l.f. Stay All Night Micro Fine Setting Mist. This is a really great product, first of all, because it's super affordable, but also because it comes out in such a fine micro mist that you can really control how much product you're putting on your face, and you're getting a very, very even application. The setting powder that I'm going to be using today is the Derma Blend Professional Illuminating Banana Powder. I really like this product because it does an amazing job of brightening your complexion while giving you a really, really nice healthy glow. So I'm just going to open it up and I'm going to put a little bit in my lid. It's kind of a lot. I'm going to put some back. And then I'm going to take this domed powder brush and I'm going to work the powder into the brush really, really well. Then I'm going to take the brush and I'm going to tap the powder into the brush, and then I'm going to dust the excess off. This is going to make sure that we're getting a really even coverage of powder on our face. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to apply a thin layer of powder on my face. I'm going to start first of all in any spots where I need a little bit more powder coverage. So that would be on my T-zone and my chin, and then I'm going to just do the rest of my face. I'm going to pull the powder down my neck. I want to make sure that I have a thin, even layer on all of my skin, because if I have an area of skin that's not covered in the powder and I go over it with my powdered bronzer, it's going to really stick to that place and it's going to look patchy in that spot. I want to make sure we have a very, very thin, even coverage everywhere. And now we're going to move on to the bronzer. You're going to want to choose a matte bronzer for this, preferably one in more of a neutral shade. For this particular look today, we're using our bronzer to primarily act as a contour enhancer on our face. And if we choose anything that has a shimmer in it, it's going to do the exact opposite of contouring because it's going to reflect the light black off of our skin and it's going to actually highlight those areas that we're looking to do a soft contour on. The contour that I'm using today is the Marcel Eye Bronze Matte Bronzing Powder, and I'm using it in the color medium bronze. And to apply our product, I'm just using this fluffy, medium-sized angle brush. You want to make sure that you're using a brush that's fluffy, because if you use a brush that's too densely packed, when we're applying our bronzer, we're going to kind of get streaks on our face, and it's not going to blend in properly. And we want to make sure that the brush is medium-sized, because if we were to use a big brush like this, we're not really going to have control over where we're applying our product, so it's not going to give the proper contouring effect. But if we were to use a smaller brush, it would pack too much product in one spot, and it just wouldn't give us like a blended effect. So this is ideally the density and size of brush that you want to use. It doesn't necessarily have to be an angled brush, but just this density and this size. I'm going to work the product into my brush, and I'm going to tap the excess off. The places that I'm going to want to be applying it is on my cheek, just above the hollow of my cheek, the same place where we applied our contour. I'm also going to apply a little bit to my forehead. I didn't apply any contour to my forehead, so we're relying strictly on the bronzer in this area to give us definition. I'm also going to do a little bit on my jawbone. This is going to help frame the face. And I'm going to pull it down my neck a little bit. This is also going to help frame the face, but it's also going to warm up the neck a little bit because the bottom of our neck doesn't tend to get as tanned as the rest of our face. I'm also going to use this to do a little bit of contouring on my nose, but to do that, I'm going to use this kind of medium-sized domed, focus please. I'm going to use this medium-sized domed eyeshadow blending brush. I'm going to apply a little bit, tap off the excess, and I'm going to just apply it down the sides of my nose, as well as the bottom like this. Using a matte bronzer to contour your nose is a really, really great way to get a really soft contour. I find especially with the way that my nose is naturally a little bit rounder, if I use actual like contouring powders to contour my nose, I end up getting a really, really like muddy look. And I find using the powdered bronzer just gives me the most natural nose contour without like looking too much. So silly me, I went ahead and I did the next step, but I forgot to press play on my camera. So as you can see, I already have highlighter on my face, but I'm just gonna go and show you what I did. For this step, I would advise using either a liquid or a gel highlighter. Reason being, those two types of products are going to blend into the skin the best, giving us the most natural finish. You definitely want to avoid any highlighters that have like a really sparkly or metallic finish to them. Not to say that those aren't really good products. I really like to use finishes like that, but for the look that we're going to today, it's just not going to look natural. Instead, you're going to want to choose a highlighter that either has a luminescent or a pearl finish to it. And that's really going to give us that healthy glow that we're looking for. The product that I'm using today is the Anastasia Liquid Glow, and that's in the color Perla. And what I did was I applied a little bit to my hand, and then I just took my finger and I dabbed it onto my finger. And I guess I'll just go ahead and add a little bit more to show you guys what I did. Now I'm adding it just to the high points of my cheeks. I don't want to add it like everywhere in this area because that's just going to make my face look shiny instead of glowy. I also want to avoid pulling it towards the under eye area because that can accentuate any bags that you may have underneath your eye. So I'm just tapping it and blending it in with my finger. I also went ahead and I added a little bit to my Cupid's bow and just to the tip of my nose. I'm not going to apply it to any other parts of my face because then instead of having a glowy look, I could end up having a shiny look instead. And then the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a little bit more of my setting spray. And this is just to make sure that the highlighter that I just applied is fully melted in with the rest of the products on my skin. Now I'm just going to go ahead and finish the rest of my look off camera by doing my under eye makeup as well as my lipstick. Here's the final result, guys. What do you think? We have a really beautiful and wearable soft contour makeup look. This type of makeup look lends itself really nicely to daytime wear, as it gives you a nice sculpted look without being overly dramatic or harsh. If you haven't yet, guys, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I am a new content creator, so it would really, really help me out. Until next time, guys, bye!